Go out to your backyard, sit down in the chair you actually sit in, and look straight at whatever is ruining it. The road, the neighbor's deck, the heat pump ticking over by the fence. If you can see it from that chair, you can hear it, and the straight line between your eyes and it is the entire job. But hardly anybody builds for that line. They fence the whole garden, spread the money thin, and wonder why it still sounds the same out there. So what you build instead is a lot smaller than you're expecting. One solid panel, gapless, running right down to the ground, only as long as it needs to be to cover the source from where you sit, and set as close to the noise as your property lets you get it. Then get somebody to hold a broom handle up while you're still sitting in that chair, and mark the height where it just blots the source out of view. That's your panel height, and on the jobs I've done, it comes out taller than the fence the man already owns almost every time. The highway engineers have a number for that. The Federal Highway Administration says a barrier gives you about 5 decibels the moment it's tall enough to break the line of sight, and after that, roughly another 1.5 decibels for every extra meter of height you add on top. I'd hang the plan on those first 5 because they're the only ones you get for free. Everything after is bought a foot at a time. Their own figure for what a good barrier really delivers is 5 to 10 decibels, and a 10 decibel drop is where a listener says it sounds half as loud. That's the blocker, and it's the same panel whether you're fighting a road or a machine. What's left is why the position does more work than the size, what to build the panel out of, and where the money goes that never reaches the noise at all. A barrier doesn't stop sound the way a wall stops a football. What it does is cast a shadow, and where you put it decides how big that shadow gets. Take a bare bulb in a dark room and hold a book up in front of it. Right against the glass, that book throws darkness across most of the room. Bring it back to your own eyes and the shadow is deep, but it covers only you. Out in the middle, you've barely dimmed anything. Sound works the same way, and it's the only bit of physics on this subject I think is worth knowing, because it's why BKL consultants, an acoustics firm, rank a barrier best close to the source, next best close to you, and worst of all, halfway between. Which is why 20 feet of screening beside the patio beats 90 feet of fence around the boundary, at 1/5 of the fence. Somebody rings the entire property, spends the lot, and the seat they actually use is still 40 feet from the nearest bit of it. I've been called out to look at that more than once, and there's nothing to do about it except start again in the right place. The other half of it is what goes over the top. Sound bends round the top edge of a panel and comes back down behind it, so the shadow is deepest immediately behind the barrier and gets shallower the further back you go. So sit in the shadow. 20 feet back from a panel and you're mostly out of it again. Most gardens will only give you one of those 2 positions, and if I only get one, I take the source end, because that one helps everybody standing behind it. There's one case where the source end is free, and it's the machine in your own garden. A heat pump, a pool pump, an air conditioning unit. That panel can go a couple of feet from the racket, which is as close as anybody ever gets, and it's where I'd start if you've got one. But never box the unit in. Anything that restricts the sound restricts the airflow, and you'll cook the machine you were trying to quiet. 1 or 2 sides only, set well back, and the real clearance is printed in that unit's own installation manual. Read it rather than guessing. Which leaves what to build the panel out of. You'll hear that more mass means more blocking, and I went along with that for longer than I should have. Past a certain point, it stops being true. The Federal Highway Administration's rule of thumb for barrier material is 20 kilograms per square meter, which is 4 pounds a square foot. Anything at or over that has a transmission loss of at least 20 decibels, and 20 is more than a backyard barrier is ever going to deliver anyway. For scale, a 4x8 sheet of 3/4 inch plywood weighs around 60 pounds, so it's carrying a bit under 2 pounds a square foot on its own. 2 layers gets you close, and hung over the fence boards you already have, you're past the number and finished. That same acoustics firm goes further, and this is the part worth writing down. A barrier that supports itself and stands up to the wind will usually have more than enough transmission loss already. Build it strong enough to survive a gale, and the blocking comes with it. I've built to that number, and I've built well past it. And standing there in the garden, I couldn't have told you which was which. What it does have to be is properly solid, no gaps, right down to the ground. The highway guidance is blunt about it. Openings destroy a barrier's effectiveness. A quarter inch between the boards leaks like the boards aren't there, and that strip of daylight under a fence is a clear run for tire noise. So overlap them, or use tongue and groove, or run battens over the seams. Plain boards butted up tight will shrink in the first dry spell and open right up on you, and I've lost count of the gardens where that was the only reason nothing changed. Wood always does that. There's a catch in all of it, and it's the part nobody covering this ever mentions. What makes a fence block sound is exactly what makes it catch wind. A gappy fence lets the weather through. A solid, heavy, tall one is a sail, bolted to posts that were sized for an ordinary fence. I take that seriously because I've heard it go wrong too often. Somebody adds mass to his fence panels, and the next ordinary storm puts the whole run on the far side of the creek. So if you're going solid or going tall, the post size, the depth, the spacing, and the footings are a fence builder's call and a permit office's call. That isn't me being careful for the sake of it. Height limits are local as well, and on a corner lot there are sight lines to the road you aren't allowed to block at all. One more before you dig. Call 811 first. It's free, you give them the address, the utility companies come out and mark what's buried, and then you put your post holes in. People put an auger through a gas line doing exactly this job every year. Hedges and evergreens are where most of the wasted money goes. I won't tell you to skip them, but I will tell you what the measurements say. The Federal Highway Administration puts it at about 30 meters of dense planting, roughly 100 feet deep, for 5 decibels, and they don't count planting as a noise measure at all. What they credit it with is psychological benefit, and that's their phrase. That part is real though, so I'll give it its due. Hiding the source from view changes how much the noise bothers you, even when the meter doesn't move. 2 rows of arborvitae won't quiet your garden. They might still make you happier sitting in it, and that's worth having, just not out of the noise budget. Thin decorative slat screens are a lattice of holes with a price tag on it. Outdoor curtains sold for soundproofing aren't heavy enough or sealed enough to block anything worth measuring, and taking a bit of echo off a hard patio is the end of their range. Mass-loaded vinyl needs a different answer, because the version most people buy for this was never meant to sit outside. The ordinary indoor sheet is not a sun product, and the makers sell a separate reinforced grade with ultraviolet protection built into it, which tells you plenty about how the first one gets on in the weather. So buy that one if you buy any. And know what you're buying it for. The standard sheet is £1 a square foot, a quarter of the 4 you're aiming for, so it isn't carrying your barrier. Its real job on a fence is sealing a face that's full of gaps. Sealing is where blocking runs out, and what's left after that is masking. A fountain, a small water feature, moving water somewhere near where you sit. I like them, and I've put them in, and I'll still tell you they don't reduce anything. What they do is lift the floor, so the traffic stops standing out against the quiet, and against a constant hum that works beautifully. It does nothing for the truck that downshifts at the junction, because your ear locks on to whatever changes. Which is why the chair comes first. You can't size a panel or place one until you know exactly what you're hiding and from where, and almost nobody looks before they start buying. So go and sit in it this weekend. Then tell me in the comments what turned up in that sightline, because I put money on a few of you finding something you had never once thought about.